Those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Conley. I'm the district attorney here in Suffolk County in Boston. First, I want to offer my condolences to the families and the friends and the colleagues of Dr. Bolanos and Dr. Field. From every account, they were dedicated and compassionate physicians, clinicians. They were well respected in their profession and beloved by their family and friends. Members of my staff met with members of their families and their friends yesterday, and I can't even begin to describe the heartbreak that those families are feeling today. As district attorney, the responsibility for all death investigations that occur in Suffolk County rests with me, and as such, it is my responsibility to correct certain statements made early in this investigation that were based on inaccurate preliminary information. Specifically, late Friday evening or early Saturday morning, Commissioner Evans' statement that the defendant, Texera, fired on responding Boston police officers was inaccurate and based on information that was provided to him at the very large and chaotic multiple homicide scene. I was there myself. It was a very chaotic scene. Based on interviews with the first responding officers and corroborated by our analysis of the crime scene, our preliminary investigation suggests that the officers were responding to a report of an intruder at that residence who was armed with a gun, and the officers encountered that intruder, who turned out to be Texera, in a darkened interior hallway. The officers believed that this assailant either pointed or fired a weapon at them in this dark hallway, and as a result, they discharged their own firearms. I want to be clear that we are not drawing any negative connotations or conclusions to the propriety of these actions at this stage. We are simply informing the public in order to correct the record. I've spoken with Commissioner Evans about this, and of course he agrees that it was important to correct the record about this information as soon as possible. Second, the question of motive has been raised time and time again over this weekend and has been the subject of intense scrutiny. There is no evidence whatsoever at this stage to conclude that this defendant had a personal relationship with Dr. Bolanos or Dr. Field. Now that may change, but at this point, 3+ days into our investigation, we have no evidence to believe that they were in any sort of prior relationship. Nor is there currently any evidence to explain why he would attack them so viciously in their own home. But there's a reason we as prosecutors aren't obliged to prove motive in any homicide case or any crime for that matter, because murder defies rational explanation. Oftentimes, it can never be explained, even when all the facts and all of the evidence are known. The Bolanos and Field families should have learned the details of their loved ones' deaths in a private, compassionate environment delivered by men and women in my office who are trained to do so. Instead, they read specific details about the crime scene in news reports that were graphic and disturbing. Even worse, some of those details were flatly, incontrovertibly wrong. I can say this based on my own visit to the crime scene on Friday and my constant communication with the assigned prosecutors throughout the weekend up to this afternoon. Because many of these details will become part of the evidence in the defendant's upcoming murder trial, I am not at liberty to correct them at this point. But I do want the anonymous sources who provided that information to the press to know that you deeply hurt two grieving families. Finally, I also want to acknowledge that on Friday night there were 2 other homicides that were committed in our city that drew far less media interest. Antoine Stevenson, age 25, was shot and killed on Rexford Road in Mattapan. And Cervulo, Galvo, and Tunez, age 18, suffered fatal stab wounds on Groom Street. Their lives also had meaning, and their murders were also cruel. I want to extend my sympathies to their loved ones as well, and I want to reassure them that they can count on this office to speak for Antoine and Cerullo with the same level of commitment to justice we have promised to the Bolanos families, the Bolanos and Fields families. And I want them to know that we will apply the same level of resources and the same high standards as we do in each and every case for each and every victim, no matter who they might be, no matter where they might live. We will make their voices heard, all 4 of them, and I ask that you keep them in your thoughts and prayers tonight. And I could take a few questions.
Can you comment on what we've been hearing a little bit about Texera possibly at one point working at the Court Square Press building, which is the sister building of where this happened, and that he may have in fact been in possession of a master key of some sort?
This is very early on in the investigation, and we are looking into that possibility. Not the second part about the master keys yet at this point that I'm aware of, but certainly about any kind of employment that he may have had in the area.
Just to be clear, District Attorney, you don't challenge the statements we heard at the arraignment today that there were text messages from Mr. Field that he was being robbed. There was someone trying to rob them. That there was a black bag, according to your prosecutor, found especially conspicuously in an area that had jewels, and those jewels, presumably, he said, belonged to Ms. Bolanos.
So I will confirm for you that Dr. Field sent a text message to a friend. The contents of that text message were not as elaborate, I think, as you said, but it alerted the friend that Dr. Field was was very concerned there was an intruder in the home. That friend contacted the Boston police, and it was based on that information that the officers were dispatched to that location and went to the 11th floor. As far as the black bag is concerned, you are correct. A black bag was recovered, and in that black bag was some jewelry, and either in that bag or another bag, a replica or a replica firearm or a BB gun was recovered. But that was in the bag or in a bag, and we do not believe at this preliminary stage of the investigation that it was in the hands of Texera at the time he was shot.
Within the 4 corners of what was presented, it sounds like you're talking about a robbery.
Well, you know, every possibility is on the table right now, and it's way too early for us to speculate. Anybody?
How did Texera know the 2 victims? How did he come to target them in particular?
Well, I just said to you that was really one of the main points of this press conference here, or press availability, was to tell you we have no evidence at this stage of the investigation that there was any connection between them.
Was there any weapon found on Mr. Texera?
We did find at least 1 knife was found at the scene.
How did he get access to the building, to the apartment?
Matter of an ongoing investigation.
2 questions.
As far as his past crimes for bank robberies, I mean, a lot of people critiqued the sentence for that, the 9 months. I mean, is there any response to that?
Well, the defendant at the time he had no criminal record. It was a non-violent offense. He passed a note to a bank teller. He received, I believe, $1,000. The defendant offered to plead guilty. He pled guilty, and it was a sentence of 9 months, which he served. Our understanding is that the defendant was released just a matter of days or weeks before this event occurred.
District Attorney, initial reports, there were some comments that possibly the suspect had said to police that if they went back into that building, they would find another person there who was going to shoot at police. Is there any indication that there's any truth to that there was anyone else involved besides this one particular suspect?
I can confirm that as a result of statements that Mr. Texera made after he was apprehended, the police sent in their SWAT team. They swept the building, secured the building, and found no other persons in the building.
Can you clarify that officers believed he shot at them, and you say that he didn't have a real gun and didn't have a gun in his hand?
Again, you remember this is a very chaotic moment, dark, high tension, and based on what we know now, the officers believe that either he pointed a weapon at them, shots were fired by one of the officers, that caused other officers to believe that gunfire was there was a, exchange of fire taking place. Therefore, that officer fired his weapons.
Thank you, officers on administrative leave.
Was Texera wearing an ankle bracelet, or was he supposed to be wearing one?
I don't know the answer to that, and we'll continue to. Thank you all for coming tonight.